All right, let's talk about the first round of the NFL draft. I have a lot of thoughts and takeaways from day one, starting with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Pittsburgh went into day one with only Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson being the only QBs on the roster. And when it was their turn to pick 21st overall, Shedeur Sanders was still on the board. They brought him in on the top 30 visit. It went pretty well. Mike Tomlin said it went pretty well. Shedeur felt it went pretty well. And I thought there was no chance in hell Pittsburgh would pass on him if he was available. But they did. And they go with Oregon defensive tackle Derek Harmon instead, who is a really good player. And his comp is Cam Hayward. He has position versatility. He can play defensive tackle. He can play defensive end. Here's my problem. The Steelers still have failed to address their biggest need to start this offseason, which is quarterback. And as good as a player as Derek Harmon is and eventually will be, can he throw the football to George Pickens or DK Metcalf? The Steelers do not have a second-round pick either. So you're going to miss out on the opportunity to get Jalen Milroe or Shedeur Sanders unless you trade up, which means that the Steelers are banking on Aaron Rodgers signing for one more year, seeing if he can finally end their very long playoff drought, or you're going to go to the recycling bin trading for either Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins, which puts the Steelers in the same situation that they have been since the retirement of Big Ben. You keep playing musical chairs with the quarterback position. Mike Tomlin keeps thinking that the Steelers can make a Super Bowl run despite having below average quarterback play in the conference that's home to the majority of the NFL's best quarterbacks. The Steelers are flat out idiots for passing on Shedeur Sanders in the first round. Say what you want to about him being overrated, overhyped because of his last name, but he definitely is a talented enough quarterback to be a 10-year starter in this league. And the Steelers, once again, have no idea what the hell they're doing at quarterback. And unless Shedeur continues to fall, which I hope he does because I really want him to be a Steeler, because at this point, they have no true options. Aaron Rodgers has made no commitment to playing football this year. He still is on the fence to what he wants to do as far as his NFL career, and I think there's a 70% chance he ends up retiring. It seems like he either wants to play for the Vikings or that's just it. He's going to call it a career. You cannot keep making excuses for Mike Tomlin coming up short in the playoffs due to him not having a quarterback when he chooses to ignore addressing this position. Quarterback is the most impactful position in the NFL when it comes to winning games in this league. If you have a good quarterback, you have a shot to compete for a Super Bowl every single year, regardless if your roster has certain limitations at other positions. But Mike Tomlin and Amar Khan keep on getting these Band-Aids at the position, and then we wonder why the Steelers always get their ass kicked in the wild card round. You're not going to go far if once you get into the postseason, you have to go up against aliens like Lamar, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. At this point, Mike Tomlin has just wrote his bid as the Steelers head coach, and he is guaranteeing that he either is going to make sure the Steelers go one and done in the playoffs once again, or he's going to end up eventually getting fired. Mike Tomlin, for as long as he has been the Steelers head coach, he has say when it comes to certain personnel positions. Quarterback is too important for him not to have a say in this matter. And if you're banking on Kyle McCord, Will Howard, or Quinn Ewers becoming good starters, you're lying to yourself. At best, you get capable backup play for them. Mason Rudolph is not going to get the Steelers far. And what really will piss me off even more is if the Browns end up taking Shedeur Sanders, and once again, the Steelers allow an in-division rival to get their hands on a transcendent level quarterback. Shedeur's floor, at his worst, he's a top 20 quarterback. He's a low-end starter. He's like Teddy Bridgewater, where He's a journeyman guy who bounces around on several teams, but still carves up a somewhat solid career. But his ceiling is that he could be a top 5, top 7 quarterback in this league and be somewhat 85% of what Joe Burrow is. And that's good enough for the Steelers to make a deep Super Bowl run, since they already have a pretty good team. They draft pretty well. They do a really good job of developing the talent that they select as well in these drafts. But it just really confuses me how the Steelers just neglect to address what has been the biggest Achilles heel for this franchise these last couple of years. Drafting a defensive tackle is not going to help you beat Josh Allen or Lamar in the first round if you don't have great quarterback play. Getting Shedeur would have not only given the Steelers more flexibility in terms of their salary cap, where you could have still gone out and traded for a pretty good defensive tackle or signed whoever was the best available defensive tackle in free agency. It would have allowed you to extend George Pickens with Shedeur being on that rookie deal. It would have given you more cap space to make sure that you can have one of the best receiving duos in the league for years to come with Pickens and Metcalf. It also will help you make things a lot easier when it comes to retaining TJ Watt, who is looking for a new contract extension as we speak right now. I just really don't understand this decision by Pittsburgh to pass on Shedeur Sanders for Derek Harmon. A defensive tackle is not more important than having serviceable quarterback play, something that the Steelers haven't had since Big Ben last was on the field. And eventually you have to ask yourself, does Mike Tomlin just think that he's such a good enough coach that he can win with anybody? Because it sounds pretty ignorant to believe that, unless they plan on getting Tom Brady out of retirement, which I still feel should be on the table for Pittsburgh. I get he is the minority owner of the Raiders, but if the Steelers give him an opportunity to play, he has no problem giving up whatever shares he has that franchise and running it back with one more season. And I don't think that relying on Aaron Rodgers to sign a one-year deal to see if he can go out on top is a good option either. Aaron Rodgers is unpredictable. And I watched a little bit of his documentary on Netflix. He's a little bit of a loose cannon. You don't really know what to expect from him. And I still think that Aaron Rodgers is a capable quarterback. But what's going to happen once Aaron Rodgers hangs up the cleats after 2025? You're going to be right back in the same position around the same time next year that you've been for the past 4 years. You still don't have a long-term fucking answer at quarterback. This was an idiotic decision that the Steelers made, passing on Shedeur Sanders in favor of a defensive tackle, because now you still don't have the most important area of your team addressed going into this year. And even if you do sign Aaron Rodgers, you're going to be right back in the same situation come next year, looking for another quarterback. And what are you going to do to address that? Are you going to get another Band-Aid? I really don't get the Steelers' decision to pass on Shedeur. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. I'm trying to figure out what their plans are, but this just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content. Now, the New York Giants are another team that in the first round was in the market for another young quarterback, and they decided to trade up back into the first round late to get Jaxson Dart. And Jaxson Dart, before the draft started a few hours prior, Joe Schoen, the general manager of the Giants, his son posted a highlight clip of Jaxson Dart on his story before he made his page private. So it pretty much gave away who the Giants were going to end up selecting. And this doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. It's not the fact that the Giants drafted Jaxson Dart. It's the fact that you have a general manager and a head coach who their job security past this year is in jeopardy. You don't know if you're going to be around next year to give Jaxson Dart the opportunity to start. So if you were going to trade back into the first round for a player, it would have made more sense to trade back into the first round to get a player that can have an instant impact for you day one. Jaxson Dart isn't going to help Brian Daboll or Joe Schoen save their jobs this year. And plus, you already had 3 quarterbacks on the roster prior to making this move. You had Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, who you signed in free agency on relatively cheap deals. And you recently just extended Tommy DeVito. Now you have 4 quarterbacks on your roster. And you gave up a second and 2 third-round selections, one for next year's draft. So you're giving up really important draft capital that could have been converted into maybe 1 or 2 average or above average level starters for you, which makes the pressure on Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen magnified times 100. Now, if things don't work out for you this year, I don't know what John Mora's expectations are for this team and what he's looking for to keep Brian Daboll and Schoen around for another year. But if they don't win at least 7-8 games, these guys are probably going to get fired before the season even ends, which is why the decision to trade back into the first round for Jaxson Dart made no sense to me. Passing on Shedeur Sanders for Jaxson Dart is one thing, but drafting a quarterback that is not going to touch the field at all during the regular season when your jobs are on the line, it just confuses me. The Giants would have been better served drafting an offensive tackle, adding more talent on defense, and then you just gave up so much capital to do so, trading up with the Houston Texans to 25, where now you're going to be asked out of being able to continue to add impact level rookies that can make things a lot easier for you in terms of being able to be competitive this year. Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston are good enough to keep you afloat, but they're not good enough to help you beat a team like the Washington Commanders with how good Jaden Daniels was in year 1. You can only imagine how good he's going to be in year 2. He could damn near be the best quarterback in the NFL this year. Same thing with Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts may not be viewed as an elite quarterback by most, but the Eagles still have a more talented team overall than what the Giants do. And the Commanders do as well. The Giants still find themselves stuck in a situation where you don't have a lot of talent and you end up making the decision to try to address the future where you might not be there for the future. There's no guarantee Brian Daboll is going to be around next year to coach up Jaxson Dart. You have no security past this year unless you're able to win. Now, unless Schoen and Daboll feel like they've done enough this offseason to where they feel comfortable with where they at or where they're at currently from a talent standpoint, the Jaxson Dart trade, if I had to grade it, I give it a D-. If you're able to survive this season, then I give it a B+ or A-. I have nothing against Jaxson Dart. If you want to take him over Shedeur Sanders, cool. You know, both quarterbacks have their strengths and their weaknesses. Brian Daboll is one of the better offensive minds in the league. So if there was anybody who could help Jaxson Dart become a solid starter in the NFL, it definitely is him based off his track record at developing quarterbacks in the past. There's a lot to like about Jaxson Dart. I think he has a pretty good arm. He's a really good athlete. Coming from that Lane Kiffin system, it's going to take him a year to have to adjust to the NFL, but he could be a pretty decent quarterback. He could be a lot similar to what Jalen Hurts is, but a little bit less athletic. But with your job being on the line, if you don't win this year, this was a wasted pick, and you just lost a lot of meaningful draft capital that you could have used to help you get more instant impact players in this year's draft. The Jaguars, without a doubt, made the biggest splash in day 1 of the NFL draft, trading up the farm to get Travis Hunter, the do-it-all player who won the Heisman Trophy at Colorado. And I don't feel like the Jaguars got fleeced in this trade by the Cleveland Browns. Travis Hunter could revolutionize the NFL if he is able to play both ways at a really high level. But even if he isn't, what he does for Jacksonville is, one, he's going to put fans in seats. You already have a lot of Jaguar fans on social media talking about how they can't wait to buy Travis Hunter's jersey, how they can't wait to see him play in the Jaguars uniform. He is from the state of Florida. He grew up in West Palm. He moved to Georgia for his high school football career, but he's a Florida boy at heart. So you pretty much bring him home. He's going to be able to play in front of his friends and family that he grew up with. And the second thing that Jacksonville is getting out of Travis Hunter is that with him playing receiver alongside of Brian Thomas Jr., you're going to have one of the best receiving duos in the NFL, which helps out Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, up to this point in his career, he's been a massive disappointment. He was labeled to be a generational quarterback. He was supposed to be the second coming of Andrew Luck, and he's been far from that. He's been really inconsistent. And getting Travis Hunter, pairing him alongside of BTJ, helps Trevor Lawrence take that next step in his career when it comes to living up to the hype. You have Liam Cohen as the head coach, who did a brilliant job his lone season calling plays for the Buccaneers. He also was the offensive coordinator for Kentucky in 2021 when Will Levis had that breakout year and he burst onto the scene. Liam Cohen was a huge reason for that. And with Trevor Lawrence throwing to Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr., his chances of having a really big season this year does nothing but increase dramatically. And the Jaguars are a better team today with Travis Hunter than what they were before when they made this move. Plus, you have somebody that not only is going to help address your need at receiver, giving Trevor Lawrence another weapon to throw to, but you also are going to have somebody that can also address a big hole that you had at corner. Cornerback was one of the biggest weaknesses that teams constantly exploited when they played the Jaguars last year. I don't question if Travis Hunter can play both ways at a high level in the NFL. The NFL is home to the majority of the freakish athletes in the world. Travis Hunter is in that conversation. He's a 1%er. He played both ways in Boulder, Colorado, a place that has high elevation where it's even harder to breathe than most states in the country. If you're playing 120 snaps in college with that altitude and that degree of difficulty that it is to breathe, you can definitely play 80, 90 snaps both ways in the NFL. Is Travis Hunter going to be able to hold up throughout the entirety of a 17-game regular season? I doubt it, but it's worth giving him a shot. You just can't drive Travis Hunter with the talent he has playing both positions, cornerback and receiver, and not give him the opportunity to show that he can do both in the NFL. The Jaguars, at least for his rookie season, should allow him to play both ways and see how it works out. And if things don't go quite the plan, how Travis Hunter envisions, then he probably will come to the realization, okay, this is a little bit more difficult than what I initially thought it would be. I'm going to pick a position and stick with it primarily going into my second season. How the Jaguars can use Travis Hunter, there's a bunch of different ways they can go about it. There can be certain games where maybe the Jaguars want to utilize him more on defense than they do offense, and you allow him to start at corner, but you insert him into 20, 30 snaps offensively. And you have a week of install for Travis Hunter to learn, get up to date with what they want him to do that week on offense, and vice versa. If you want to play Travis Hunter more at receiver because you feel like it'll be more advantageous for you based off the opponent that you're going against to have him at receiver more than cornerback, that makes a lot of sense too. Or you either let him play receiver for 80% of the snaps, and you allow him to play cornerback for 20% of the snaps. But no matter what, Travis Hunter is going to be on somewhat of a pitch count. They're not completely going to allow him to play both ways 100% of the game. He's going to have to come out for at least a handful of plays to make sure that he's well rested, to make sure that he doesn't completely get worn out throughout the course of an NFL game. And the Big 12, Travis Hunter didn't face too many NFL caliber wide receivers. But when he did, when he went up against Ted McMillan, he struggled in 2023. And he has struggled against more bigger, physical wide receivers. Guys like DK Metcalf, George Pickens, and A.J. Brown are going to give him a lot of trouble. But if he's able to play cornerback a little bit more, then he'll be able to shut those guys down. But it is going to be a little bit difficult when you're getting guarded against a guy like a Sauce Gardner or Pat Surtain or Christian Gonzalez on offense, and you're running 1,000,000 miles per hour downfield on a lot of routes and you don't even get targeted. Then you have to do the same thing on the opposite side. You're running 1,000,000 miles per hour guarding these behemoths like Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown at receiver. It is going to get hella tiring, and it is going to wear you down fairly quickly. But I'm really interested to see how this works out for Travis Hunter playing both ways. The Jaguars are going to allow him to do so, and I'm happy that he's coming to the city of Duval. There was no excitement about the Jags throughout the entirety of this offseason. What Travis Hunter has done has reinvigorated this city and reinvigorated this fan base. The Jags have had a hard time putting asses in seats for a very long time. Outside of that year when they went to the playoffs, year one under Doug Peterson, nobody was really showing up to these games. You have to find a way to bring some excitement to this football team, and drafting Travis Hunter, albeit they gave up the farm to do so, was the right decision. Not only are you selling more tickets trading for Travis Hunter, but you're also helping increase Trevor Lawrence's chances of living up to the expectations that he had when he went first overall a few years ago. Because now you have him throwing the BTJ and Travis Hunter. That's a nasty receiver duo. This was a necessary trade the Jags had to make. I can't get mad at them for giving up what they are giving up to get Travis Hunter. I feel no matter how his career plays out, no matter if he can play both ways or if he eventually has to pick one position or the other, he's going to end up becoming an all-pro level talent and potentially a Hall of Famer down the road, depending on how long he can last in the league. And if you're getting that kind of player, it's worth giving up necessary draft capital that the Jags did to move up to second overall with the Browns to get him. What the Chargers did tonight in the first round of the draft isn't surprising. We know what Jim Harbaugh is all about. He wants to dominate the line of scrimmage with good offensive line and defensive line play, and he wants to win a time of possession battle, tiring out the opposing team's defense, keeping their star quarterback off the field. And the way he plans on doing that is by implementing the most deadliest ground and pound that you're going to see in the NFL this year. You already signed Najee Harris in free agency, who has been one of the better running backs in the NFL when it comes to breaking tackles. And now you pair him up with Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina, who a few years ago in 2023 led all of college football in broken tackles. It's pretty clear what Jim Harbaugh wants the Chargers to be this season, and that's the bullies of the NFL. How are you going to be able to beat Patrick Mahomes and some of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, like Lamar, Josh Allen, who all reside in the AFC? Well, keep them off the field. They can't beat you if they are not on the field to make enough plays to do so. And by getting Najee Harris and Omarion Hampton, you're getting two sledgehammers at the running back position. Opposing defenses are going to get tired as hell tackling these two bruising backs throughout the course of 60 minutes. Najee Harris was a lot better than what the stats may indicate he was with the Steelers. They never had an offensive line as good as what the Chargers are going to have going into this season. They recently signed Mekhi Becton as well. The Chargers could have the best offensive line in the National Football League this season. And with Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris running behind this old line, both of these guys could easily go for over 1,000 yards. Omarion Hampton, to me, was the second best running back in this draft behind Ashton Jeanty. Not only is he really good at breaking tackles, but he moves incredibly well for a guy of his size. And he also is pretty good when it comes to pass blocking as well. He has really good vision. He reminds me a lot of DeMarco Murray. DeMarco Murray had a similar build to what Omarion Hampton does. He's not really agile, but he does have breakaway speed where if he does get a bunch of green grass ahead of him, you're going to have a hard time chasing him down from behind. Najee Harris, he's not as explosive as what Omarion Hampton is. Omarion Hampton is a big play threat than what Najee is. But these two guys put together in the same running back room is going to allow the Chargers to be the team that Jim Harbaugh wants them to be, and it's going to help them come playoff time. Once you get into the month of late October, November, that's when running the football becomes incredibly important. If you can run the football, it takes less pressure off Justin Herbert, and it puts more pressure on the opposing team's offenses to where they have to be completely perfect, because if not, let's say you get the ball to start the fourth quarter and you go 3 and out. You may not get another opportunity to touch the football until the last 5 minutes with the way the Chargers are going to be able to dominate time possession. It's one thing to have a great pass rush, but you can beat Patrick Mahomes and some of the better quarterbacks in the league, not just by being able to get after them consistently, but also just keeping them off the field. And it sounds easier said than done, but this team is built perfectly for the brand of football that Jim Harbaugh wants to play. He doesn't want to win games throwing the ball 30, 40 times. He wants to win games running the football 30, 40 times, tiring out your defense. And a lot of teams in the NFL don't have enough depth on the line of scrimmage to keep guys fresh enough to avoid getting worn down. So come the fourth quarter, if you do want to try to take some shots downfield and get the passing game going, it's a lot easier to do so. Now more teams are going to be playing the run since you've been running it down their throat for the first 45 minutes of the game. They get worn out, they get tired. Defensive coordinators get a little bit more aggressive because they feel more pressure to get their star quarterbacks back on the field. And that's when Justin Herbert can start killing them over the top with big plays down the field. The Lad McConkey and whoever they choose to draft at receiver or tight end with these last couple of picks that they have with day 2 and day 3 of the draft. So this was a great pick by the Los Angeles Chargers, and it didn't really surprise me once Colson Loveland and the tight end from Penn State, Tyler Warren, were off the board. It was pretty evident they were going to go running back. Travion Henderson would have been a really good pickup as well. But this is the team that Jim Harbaugh has dreamed of having when he first took this job. You got a good quarterback that does a really good job of taking care of the football. And when you only need to rely on him in critical situations, it makes it a lot easier for him to step up. And it also makes it a lot easier for him to have success in the postseason now that he doesn't have to be playing at an MVP level to win you postseason games. Now you can ask Justin Herbert to only throw the football 20 times a game, and you're good enough to win that way. Old school football can still win in this new age of the NFL when it's a pass-heavy league. A lot of teams now are running a lot of cover two man because they want to take away those deep plays downfield. And a good way to exploit teams that like to run a lot of cover 2 is just by running the football up the middle, because you don't have a lot of guys in the box when you run a lot of cover 2 coverage. So this was a great pick by the Chargers, and it perfectly encapsulates the kind of guy and the personality that Jim Harbaugh has. He's a tough, hard-nosed coach, and that's the mentality that the Chargers are going to have this year. They just want to bully every single team that they played this year, and getting Omarion Hampton is going to help them do that. Hey, man, if you listen to podcasts, check us out on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Give us a 5-star review if you enjoy. It was disappointing to see the Panthers walk out of free agency, not signing an impact wide receiver, and drafting Ted McMillan 8th overall finally gives Bryce Young the weapon that the Panthers have been lacking at receiver since they first drafted him. Deontay Johnson last year was good for the few games that he was on the team, And then you had the emergence of Jalen Coker, an undrafted free agent who became the Panthers' go-to receiver at the end of last year, pretty much. You got Xavier Legette going into year 2. He still showed a few flashes last year of what he can be if he can just learn how to catch the damn ball. You also drafted Jaxson Sanders in the mid-round now to Texas. Now with Ted McMillan, Bryce Young has enough weapons to where you should see him take a massive leap entering his 3rd season with the Panthers. This is the year where we finally are going to figure out what Bryce Young is. Is he truly going to be able to be a franchise quarterback? Can he be good enough to elevate the Panthers to an NFC South title, possibly a playoff win or two? This is going to be the year that we figure out if Bryce Young actually was worth the Panthers trading the farm to get him a few years ago in the 2023 NFL Draft. With Ted McMillan, you're getting somebody that profiles a lot similarly to Drake London on the Atlanta Falcons. They have a similar body type. They're not super athletic for their size. They don't really have a lot of agility. You're not going to get a lot after the catch with Ted McMillan. But what you are getting is a really smart football player. Contrary to him saying that he doesn't watch a lot of film, he has incredible awareness. He just has a knack for finding the holes in zone coverage. He had one of the lowest drop percentages out of all receivers eligible for this draft this year at around 4%. And he's a really good 50-50 ball receiver. If Bryce Young gets in trouble and nobody's open, all he has to do is say, fuck it, take McMillan somewhere downfield, and he's going to come down with it. At 6'5", 209, there aren't too many cornerbacks that match up well with Tech McMillan on the line of scrimmage unless you're going up against a Sauce Gardner or a Christian Gonzalez, a Jalen Ramsey. There's only about like 4 or 5 cornerbacks in the league that can truly guard Tech McMillan one-on-one downfield. The biggest concern that I had with Tech McMillan was his burst coming off the line. He just looked like he didn't try that much. It looked like he was just coasting on a lot of his routes. But in this offense, you're getting what should be Bryce Young's safety blanket. In third down situations with Ted McMillan's wingspan, even though he doesn't create a lot of separation, all you got to do is just put it somewhere in the proximity. He's going to go ahead and get it. And there were a lot of situations last year when he was at Arizona where he bailed out his quarterback, and a lot of those late down situations where there was nobody open, you just threw it somewhere around his proximity and he came down and caught it. Because with that catch radius that he has, it's going to be incredibly hard for a lot of corners to find a way to keep him from making crucial catches to keep drives alive. And when you look at the core that Dave Canales and the Panthers general manager has assembled around Bryce Young, it perfectly suits his skill set. You got Adam Thielen, who although he is getting up there in age, he's going to be the guy who can win underneath. Xavier Legette's going to be the deep threat that can take the top off the opposing defense. And Tech McMillan is going to be the receiver that can give you the best of everything. He can move the chains. He can be a really good possession receiver, but he also can be a really good deep threat and a really good red zone target for you as well. And when Jonathan Brooks gets back fully healthy, you're going to have a legitimate run game. The Panthers' offensive line was graded out to be a top 10 unit, top 15 according to PFF. Now the Panthers have positioned themselves to make a run at winning this division this upcoming season, at least with what they have offensively. You still do have a lot of holes to fill defensively, but you weren't going to be able to walk away with a bona fide instant impact player on defense with the 8th overall pick. And when you invest into a young quarterback, you can never get mad at it. Bryce Young is supposed to be the future of Carolina. And if he ever is going to be able to lead this franchise back to the promised land like what Cam Newton did nearly a decade ago, you're going to want to have to give him all of the pieces necessary to have a good career. And that's what they did with this selection of Ted McMillan. So I think this was a pretty good pick by Carolina. Yes, they still have a lot of areas on defense that they had to address, but even if you would have taken a guy like Mykel Williams or Jalen Walker 8th overall, you still going to have a bunch of areas that you had to fill on defense. And regardless, you aren't going to address every area on defense in one draft. There still are a good amount of free agents that the Panthers could pick up that could help improve that side of the ball. You still have guys like Donovan Ezeraku, Mike Green, who you can get in day 2 as well. You can never go wrong giving your young quarterback more weapons. And when you traded up so much to get Bryce Young, it only makes sense to continue to invest in him. So I'm not mad with them taking Ted McMillan 8th overall. He's not a reach. He should be a pretty good player. He's nothing like Quentin Johnston. He has way more reliable hands, and he's just a better overall receiver than what Quentin Johnston is because he actually plays up to his size. You don't see him getting a little buoyed with his frame. He does a pretty good job of boxing out cornerbacks, safeties, and he's a matchup nightmare. As I said earlier, there's only a handful of corners, about 4 or 5 in this league, that can actually match up well with the kind of size that Ted McMillan possesses. Now, the biggest winner of the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft to me was the Atlanta Falcons. For nearly 2 decades, the Falcons have been the worst team in the NFL at getting after the quarterback. They haven't had a good pass rusher since John Abraham. I don't know how many of you guys remember him. You got to be an OG Falcons fan to remember John Abraham. And the last time they had a guy who had double-digit sacks in the season is when they choked that 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl to New England when they had Vic Beasley, who had 15.5 sacks that year, and he was an all-pro selection. You get Jalen Walker, 15th overall, with your first pick in day 1, which Jalen Walker, to get him at that range was a pretty good selection, considering that he brings you a lot of versatility. Not only can he play on the interior of your defensive line, but he also can play outside linebacker as well. And then you trade back into the first round late with the Rams to get James Pearce Jr., who to me was one of the better overall players coming into this draft class. He made a lot of big plays for Tennessee's defense last year. Not only was he impactful getting after the quarterback, but he also came away with a lot of forced fumbles. I remember watching him against Florida. He had a big forced fumble in the red zone during that game, which ultimately led to Tennessee walking away with the win. And yeah, you did kind of give up a lot to get him. You give the Rams a second, a 7-rounder, and a first-round pick for next year's draft, but it was worth it because now you brought in 2 edge rushers that one of these guys should end up being really good. And you have a pass rusher out of Washington that you drafted last year that got injured early before the season even started that I feel can also be pretty good for you as well. So the Atlanta Falcons, with these 2 selections of Jalen Walker and James Pearce Jr., you have improved what has been your biggest Achilles heel defensively for over 2 decades now. And they say it's a quarterback-driven league. And if you want to be able to stop these opposing quarterbacks, you got to be able to get after them. You got Jalen Walker, James Pearce, guys that even if they don't pop off right away in year 1, ultimately they should blossom into pretty good pass rushers. I think James Pearce has the higher upside of the 2 since primarily he has played a lot of edge, and Jalen Walker is more of a versatile chess piece, so we don't really know how Raheem Morris plans on utilizing him. But remember, when Raheem Morris was the Rams defensive coordinator before he took this Falcons head coaching gig, he did a great job of getting the most out of the Rams' young talent that year. So if there's anybody who could help these guys reach their full potential and do it relatively early, it is Raheem Morris. He is a defensive-minded coach. The defense was the worst side of the ball for Atlanta. I expect for one of these guys to be a Pro Bowl level player. Can both of them end up being Pro Bowl level players? Absolutely, but at least James Pearce or Jalen Walker is going to give you at least 8-9 sacks in their rookie season. I'm pretty confident in that. I think that James Pearce has the better chance at doing so, since I've just seen more of him since I've seen Jalen Walker. But you also finally ended this strange habit the Falcons have had of not drafting Georgia players, which it doesn't make a lot of sense since Athens, Georgia is literally right down the street from Atlanta. They play in the Mercedes-Benz Dome in the SEC Championship. So I don't get why it has taken so long for the Falcons to finally crack the top off the bottle, diving into the bevy of riches that Georgia produces on defense. When you drive a Georgia defensive lineman, a pass rusher, they normally turn into really good players. The Eagles seem to always get the best ones. Some of them haven't really worked out, but Georgia, for the most part, produces really good talent up front. So my biggest winner of the first round of this past year's NFL draft are the Atlanta Falcons, because their biggest need, they addressed it. Getting two of the better pass rushers in the first round of this draft is an absolute win for them. So this is it for this episode of the podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I'll see you guys shortly with another episode.